Opposition parties are now gathering for a two-day convention to discuss a Moonshot Pact. It's a bold attempt at a multi-party partnership with the mission of unseating the ANC next year's elections. They're having a press briefing, so let's take you live into that briefing room.
The quality of a democracy is essentially measured by the quality of the opposition. I mean, it's a very, very critical issue. And in mature democracies, again, many people ask me, why would I be risking my reputation as an academic to be associated, no, not to be associated, but to chair the meeting. Now, in mature democracies, this is actually not unusual. Often, if you may have read some of the big coalitions in Western Europe. Often, when there's a deadlock after an election, they often bring in an outsider to help to facilitate the process. So it is obviously unusual in South Africa context, but in a democracy, it is not unusual. So what it says about our democracy, we are beginning to mature. Our democracy is beginning to mature. Very, very important. So let me talk to you really, and I'm going to stick to 2 minutes. I'm not, because I did ask that every leader here will talk for 2 minutes, and we can try here. I just heard that's very optimistic to ask from a politician, but we're going to try. So really just, I'm going to set the scene for you to understand, firstly, what we're trying to do. I mean, it's the very obvious thing that we're trying to do, obviously, as a team, and we've been involved for a couple of weeks now, is to try to, to bring the parties together in an agreement, a core group in agreement. And as I said, it is extraordinary because normally these sort of things happen after elections, not before elections. So that in itself makes it, for me, very exciting. It's a very exciting process, not only for South Africa, but it really has been an exciting process in other developing countries that people are watching what's happening and will co-learn what we are doing. So that really is the big, sort of the big picture. Coming closer to what we will be doing, really, we've had an outpouring of messages from civil society, individuals, business organizations. I mean, there are too many for me to mention them by name. So what we'll do, all of those messages of support, all positive, will be compiled. I myself personally got over 100,000 messages of support. And not only support, but I can tell you ideas. A lot of the ideas I'm going to use here, it's just ordinary people from, just ideas of and showing examples where I should be looking and so on. So that really is an exciting process. I'm not aware of any of these kind of processes where there's been such public outpouring of support and so on. So really, so that's the first. The second thing really. So the convention really is a convention not against anything, but it's a convention to build something, to build a coalition, to generate hope, and not against anything, but for something, for a better South Africa, for good government, for capable delivery. So it's for, not against. So, and that's a very, very important, I think, narrative that me as a chairperson will try to get out and emphasize throughout the proceedings. Third thing is we'll try to get the parties to agree on a core minimum vision for South Africa. Obviously, in a negotiation, parties cannot, there is give and take compromises, but it's important to have a platform, a minimum platform, and that gets agreed on. So it's a very core part of the negotiation. Secondly, we're not going to the moon. Okay? So the group will have to come up with a name which is acceptable to all of the parties. So that's obviously, I'm just going to throw it out there so you don't ask what's happening in that space. So that's going to be a conversation around that. Maybe you may have ideas. Maybe send the ideas to the party leaders. Send it on Twitter. But that's going to be important. And then pathways, I mean, if this is the core group, what about other opposition parties? As part of my mandate as the independent chairperson is to engage with some of the other opposition parties that's not part of the core group that share values and so on. So that is another conversation that will happen here, but will also ongoing conversation. So this is not the end. This is the beginning. And there'll be other conversations with other opposition parties. And then the idea here may not be possible actually in this room today or tomorrow, but to get a joint position on in relation to the national dialogue on coalition governments. You know, it's a national dialogue going on. What would be the group's thinking? What would be the ideas around that? Important, what would be the shared governing principles of the coalition? Yeah? I mean, you know, many of the coalitions that have failed at a local level, often because parties didn't have a shared governing set of principles, so it can be important. And then to come to the end, what would be the common ground for solutions for South Africa going forward? And then I'm hoping at the end that we would have a public agreement that would be transparently shown to the public, and that the parties will pledge to that agreement, and that pledge will hold them accountable. Because it's pointless of sitting for 2 days and prior to this convention and agreeing, and there's no accountability. So the public pledge really will be the accounting mechanism. Thank you very much. This is the beginning. I mean, just to recap, historic moment for us in South Africa. The first time that a coalition pact is being negotiated prior to an election. It's a historical moment. It's a moment to reimagine South Africa, to reimagine, to retell our story, our narrative in a much more positive way, in a much more hopeful way. And it's one of those opportunities. I mean, I wrote a prayer for the group, and at every negotiation session, I recited a prayer, and maybe just one line in the prayer, which is quite important. I think I'll refer to it, is in an individual's life, in a country's life, there's often a moment of decision making which could alter your path. And often what one needs as an individual, and as a country, and as a political party, and as a leader, to take the courageous step, to rise above the past in order to move forward. And I think this is the moment, and this group has been blessed to make potentially a couple of decisive decisions that may alter the trajectory of South Africa for the better. But it's going to be important that they rise as individually and collectively, that they rise above sort of petty squabbles, rise above egos, and that every decision they make, they have to think it has to be in the public interest of South Africa. It has to be for the future of all of us and for those still to be born. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Professor Gumede, who is the independent chairperson of this process, and thank you very much for that message of hope. I think it's important to everybody to understand we're looking forward to hope. To start off this historic moment, each party leader is going to give a short input, and I will call them up and they'll give us their intentions for these multi-party negotiations and what they want from there. To start off is Mr. Christopher Claassen, President of the Spectrum National Party. Mr. Claassen, may I call you up? Thank you. Each leader has got a 2-minute time. Are you okay?
I think it is a little bit.
Okay. We're going to move some of the media things, if that's okay. Just shout if you need a sound check.
Good. Good day, South Africa. Party delegates, chairperson, facilitator, and media. All glory to God. My name is Christopher Claassen, the President of Spectrum National Party, a political party in South Africa that is an equal race governing policy. The SNP is represented in all 9 provinces, and we are celebrating our 4th anniversary on the 28th of November 2023. We bow our heads in gratitude and declare our party's appreciation to be introduced as a participant in this multi-party compact or coalition that may secure a new political future and direction for South Africa. We consider today as a special moment in time, a moment that we may all look back on in the future as a turning point where the hope for building a better future for all South African citizens, a moment that will change the political future of the sovereign country. Our parties indeed, it looks forward to finding common ground on sustainable solutions for challenges facing South Africa. The agenda for this convention is inclusive of all the most important matters that all the parties collectively agreed to discuss as the convention over the next 2 days. We pray that the parties currently on board agree to work in forming a united multi-party coalition after the 24 elections, with the aim always being to offer South Africans an alternative, transparent and an accountable government prepared to be building a better future for all South Africans, and to finally replace the generally corrupt governing party, the ANC. I thank you all and promise the cooperation of SNP and other party delegates at this convention. May God bless you. Christopher Claassen, the President of Spectrum National Party.
Thank you very much, Mr. Claassen, for those helpful and insightful words. The next person who will come and give their input is Mr. Neil de Beer, President of the United Independent Movement. Mr. de Beer, can I call you up? Thank you.
Thank you. Baie goeiemôre. Molweni, Baslali, Namaste, Salam. It's good to see you all. They say that when you're a man of grammar, a person that can string a multiple of words together, people seem to be impressed. I am no such man. I am a doer, but I can publicly say that I disclaim every other member here from my utterances in the next 2 days. Today is deja vu. More than 30 years ago, I was here on this hallowed ground. I was a young member of the then Umkhonto Wesizwe attending Kodesa Nomslange. Not the same building, but the same land. We are here again. We are here again to talk about freedom. We are not here to pick a fight or make any other party public enemy number one. We are here to make the public number one. Our diversity makes us a great nation. It is in this diversity we will find a union. One of my absolute heroes was a man called Anton Franz, who fought in the Battle of Athlone, a young man, and while 50 people planned to kill him, he got up and he screamed, "Kom haal my, as jy kan." We are there again. Kom haal my, as jy kan. Everyone should be screaming that today. No more than us. The UIM is a party of value. We find honor, dignity, and just plain and simply compassion as part of our ethos and DNA. To me, it's not about a small party, and that is the rhetoric that gets thrown. Well, let me tell you, as members of the media, to me, it is not about the size of the dog in the fight. It is about the fight in the dog that matters to me. Today, we will bow our heads in God Almighty, inshallah, and we will come together as leaders of this country, not for us, but once and for all, for the people of this country. May God bless you. May God bless every one of you. I know some of you individually with respect, some of you for the first time. But when I look at you in your eyes, I see the color of your soul. I have a lot of hope. Challenges we will face today, separate opinions and agendas we will have. Elephants in rooms will be culled today. Matters of rumor and pathetic judgment will be settled. I cannot commit that I will walk with you on this journey, but I will give it a damn good go until the end. Finally, to John, who started this, but to others who spoke about this. Thank you for letting us be here. Thank you for making us part of the journey. But as the UIM says, together we will. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Beer, for those profound words. Next up to give a message is Dr. Zukile Luyenga, President of SANCO, the Independent South African National Civic Organization. Dr. Luyenga, may I ask you up?
Good morning, South Africa. Greetings to you, Program Director and the Chairperson of this arrangement, and all leaders of political parties, members of the media. Today is the day, and this is the only day where we are taking ourselves back to 1994. This is our 1994. As this pact, the Independent South African National Civic Organization seeks to say we have been let down by those whom we regarded to be the most credible and the most knowledgeable leaders. But here, we want to say we are capable collectively and individually to rise to the occasion. You are leaders, members of the pact. Don't underestimate your responsibility, your credibility, and ability to rise to that standard. South Africans have been looking for an alternative, and you are that alternative. Bring South Africa, take South Africa where it belongs, and that is to the skies. We are here. We have experienced a lot of challenges in a so-called democratic era, of which we are also going to read and learn about the failures and victims of such so-called democracy. Now we are here as drivers and conductors of a new arrangement, and that arrangement will be solicited and will be encouraged by a solidarity that will give progress and take South Africa forward. And through solidarity, we shall only progress when we take our political differences and personal feelings and put South Africans first and that we can only aspire to be a developed country, although we are developing. But we want to make sure that we all participate as leaders with our communities in their own development. We are here to stay. We are here to say to South African, this is the real CODESA, and it will take us far and where South Africa belongs. I thank you.
That was Dr. Zukuli Luyenge from the President of SANCO. Next to call up is Mr. Herman Mashaba, President of ActionSA. Mr. Mashaba.
Good morning, South Africa. Good morning, leaders of the various political parties gathered with us this morning. And thank you to the media present this morning. Fellow South Africans, as we gather here right now, outside of this room, throughout our country, 44% of South Africans are unemployed today. 82 people are being murdered each day in our country. A woman is raped every 30 seconds. Continuous load shedding cripples businesses and destroys livelihoods and jobs. And 1 million young people turn 18 each year with little or no hope. And as already indicated today, it's a day where 34 miners were murdered at Marikana. It is in these realities that brings ActionSA to this national convention. And this is what makes us put aside differences and work together with these political parties you see here. It is against this background that ActionSA recognizes the historical moment of this convention. It is the first time political parties come together, put differences aside, and try to provide a viable alternative to a failed and uncaring government. ANC, as all of us are aware, will lose its majority, and all South Africans know this. But they've never seen opposition parties putting aside differences to actually give them hope. ActionSA commits ourselves to this national convention, and we have revealed how over 91% of South Africans want this project to succeed. That said, ActionSA will deliver some tough messages to these parties over the next 2 days. We need to attract more parties to build a broad church that can achieve a majority in the next general elections. That there can be no ambiguity about the removal of the ANC. We must define this agreement in a positive vision for South Africa, not against other political parties. And we must start building confidence by removing an actual ANC EFF government under which Johannesburg residents suffer today. How can we have an agreement of a national happen when we ignore the residents of the city of Johannesburg who suffer today under an ANC EFF government? This is something that we need to confront head on. I hereby commit ActionSA to these talks and to the project of building hope for a new vision for our people, South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herman Mashaba, President of ActionSA, for your encouraging words. Next to talk is Dr. Peter Groenewald, leader of the Freedom Front Plus. Dr. Groenewald, can I invite you up?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. It is not rare in any history of peoples and nations that at one or other stage, that nation is approaching a crossroad. There are many crossroads. In the history of South Africa, we had also many crossroads, or as Professor Gumede has referred to as historical moments. 1994 was one. As far as the Freedom Front Plus is concerned, our next crossroad or historical moment is 2024. It will not be the last one. and it is also not the first one. But there's a responsibility on politicians, and I also want to say not only on politicians, but also on the electorate of that specific country. Therefore, I want to say that this initiative is an initiative of all the parties sitting here. We came together and we said that we must set an example. How are we going to ensure that we save South Africa? I don't think there's anyone in South Africa that will not agree that we are not at a good point in the history of our country. If you look at the decay, if you look at the crime situation, everybody says, but there must be change. Yes, and we must also understand, as I said, in a democracy, it's not only politicians, because there are many people that say, but you as politicians, you must solve the problems. Yes, we must. But we must also say, a political party is only as strong as the supporters who vote for that specific party. And that's why I say that we must set the example as political party leaders to say that we will take hands. But we must also say to the electorate, you must strengthen the taking of those hands so that we can save South Africa. And the only way we can save South Africa is if we get rid of the ANC government. There's no other way. And we also know that the historical moment for South Africa is that for the first time, actually, because of the electoral system of proportionality, we get to a situation where we know that there's not one single opposition party on its own who will be able to win an election next year. But because of the proportionality, every voter can vote for his or her party, make that party strong, and then know that that vote counts and strengthen all the parties so that we can take hands that as a coalition of opposition, we can become a coalition government. But we, and that's what we expect from these 2 days, is to say that we are a group of political parties here, and we must work towards a situation where we can say, firstly, that we trust each other, that we undertake, that we will be loyal towards the coalition, and that we will ensure that we will do everything we can to unseat the ANC government. Therefore, my appeal is to the electorate, register and ensure that you vote in 2024. We will set that example, and I do believe we will. But we must also understand that we are still separate political parties. I always say in Afrikaans, die Vryheidsfront Plus sal saamwerk, maar ons sal nie saam smelt nie. You must always remember, you must make your party strong to ensure that after the election, because after the election you will form a formal coalition, that you can bring those values of your party into that coalition. That is most important. But we must work hard. The Freedom Front Plus is willing to work hard and work together to ensure that we save South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Groenewald, leader of the Freedom Front Plus. Next person up is Mr. V.F. Hlabisa, president of the Inkatha Freedom Party. Can I invite you up, Honourable?
Thank you very much, Program Director. Greetings to Professor Gumede and his team, to all my fellow leaders present here today, to the support staff, the members of the media, and the people of South Africa. Let me firstly pay my tribute to the mine workers who succumbed at Marikana on this day. May their souls rest in peace. Today we meet in this historic venue to press a reset button for our country. South Africa is on the verge of becoming a failed state. The IFP is here today in this national convention because we believe that there is still hope for our country and for the people of South Africa. However, if we want things in our country to change, we cannot continue to walk the same path that we have been walking. If we want to change, we will have to do things differently. This convention is about South Africa and its people. This is not an anti-ruling party club. Our reason for convening here is much more important. We do not hate ANC, but we hate what the ANC have done in South Africa. After years of struggle, in 1994, the people of South Africa stood in long queues to cast their votes. I was one of them. We were full of hope that our country was entering a new phase of freedom and prosperity. Unfortunately, all our hopes are now lost. As the IFP, we are here to determine how best we could serve South Africa together, how to bring about much needed change, and how to make sure that the issues that are important to our constituencies are on the negotiating table. These include crime, unemployment, poverty, inequality, load shedding, and the ever-widening gap between the rich and the poor. The good news is that there is already much that we agree upon. However, as politicians, we cannot bring change alone. We need the support of all South Africans, including civil society. This is why I ask you, my fellow compatriots, please vote, stand up and be counted. If you are unhappy about the way things are in South Africa, do not stay silent. Register to vote, take a stand, and effect a change of government in 2024. I look forward to the next 2 days of deliberations. I am hopeful that we as leaders will engage in positive, constructive discussions that put the priorities of the people of South Africa first. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you very much. That was Mr. V.F. Shlabisa, President of the Inkatha Freedom Party. And our next speaker to come is Mr. John Steenhuisen, Federal Leader of the Democratic Alliance. Mr. Steenhuisen. Thank you.
Good morning to the media and good morning to the fellow leaders here today. The next 2 days is not about politics or about politicians. The next 2 days are about the people of South Africa. And the outcomes of the next 2 days of discussions need to be judged based on whether they provide concrete solutions to improve the lives of South African people. If they speak to one of the unemployed South Africans in South Africa, if they speak to the mother who's sitting around a kitchen table wondering how to feed her family, to the business owners and people who have lost their jobs because of load shedding. For that to be the case, this cannot and must not be a purely anti-ANC project. It has to be a pro-South Africa project. And tomorrow, when this part of the process is complete, please judge the politicians sitting at this table today on whether the outcomes promise greater hope and tangible improvements for your life and for your future. Ask whether they are collectively providing solutions to things like crime, unemployment, load shedding. If the answer is yes, if these parties emerge with an agreement to not only defeat the ANC, but to rescue South Africa, then I ask that you judge it as a success. because our country does not have a second to waste. The next election in South Africa will be a hinge of history moment for our country. So now it is time for leaders gathered here today to put aside differences of the past, to forget about the scars of battles gone, and focus firmly on the future. The DA is irrevocably committed to this project. It is something I publicly committed our party to at our Federal Congress in April. To all of my fellow leaders at the table, I want to say a very big thank you. Thank you for the maturity, for the compassion and love for country that has been shown, and for how far we have already come. Many people thought that we would never even be able to get to this point, sitting around a table to find common solutions. Yet, here we are. But our biggest test now lies before us. Over the next 2 days, we will no doubt have honest and very robust discussions. But I know that they will be based on the passion we all share for this beautiful country and for all the people who call her home. The people gathered here at this front table represent a broad spectrum of the South African people. Seated before you are people from Durban, Inkatha, Hammanskraal, Stilfontein, Mtuba and Cape Town. Proud South Africans, all of us. And this is the outcome we seek. What we're doing here over the next 2 days will be for the people of South Africa. An agreement for the people of not only Durban, Inkatha, Hammanskraal or Stilfontein, or Mtuba and Cape Town, but for every town and city across our country. Judge the next 2 days on what the outcomes will be to the problems you face at home in your daily life. And I'll repeat what I've said before. This project cannot be owned by politicians. It must be owned by the people. If you're satisfied with the outcomes of our discussions, I ask that the people claim their ownership by going out to register to vote in massive numbers. There are 14 million South Africans who have not voted in the last 2 elections. There are 13 million South Africans who are not registered to vote. The moment for change has now arrived, and I pledge the DA's full support over the next 2 days and urge us all to seize this momentous opportunity with both hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. John Steenhuisen, Federal Leader of the Democratic Alliance. You've now heard from all the party leaders, and I'm sure you've been all advised there will be no questions at this point, but there will be times and moments as we move through the multi-party convention. What remains is to say, from me, a good luck to everyone and to all the delegates, and we wish you well as we negotiate this multi-party national convention, and we hope it will be successful. Thank you very much. Yes, I think that would be fine. Okay. Okay. Can I ask the leaders just to maybe, sorry leaders, I agreed without asking you and I apologize. Okay. Can I ask you just to stand in front? Okay. Apologies. A politician who doesn't like a picture. Yes, exactly. So can I ask you all to come and stand in front here, and then the independent people will move away. Okay. Okay, so if anybody wants photos here, I think can we just let the photo be taken before you...
That, of course, concludes the press briefing for the coalition convention that is taking place out in Kempton Park at the Emperor's Palace. We've heard from various opposition party leaders, including the DA's John Steenhuisen, ActionSA's Herman Mashaba, also Velenkosini Tlhabisa from the IFP, just amongst other leaders coming together, reiterating the significance of this gathering ahead of next year's general elections. Now, the sentiments being that they would like to unseat the ANC and ensure that they have the majority of the votes next year, appealing to South Africans to cast their votes next year, to vote for their parties, make their parties strong, and of course ahead of this coalition engagement that will take place over the next 2 days. We'll keep you updated on how it goes. We understand there will be closed plenary sessions throughout the day, chaired by Professor William Gumede. He is the founder of Democracy Works Foundation. He'll be giving feedback to the media throughout the convention. But of course, they're trying to formulate some sort of an election, a coalition agreement ahead of next year, as they, of course, try to solidify the Moonshot Pact. So we'll keep you updated. Watch you on eNCA.